I'm delighted to have in our world headquarters here in Toronto today, Andrew Scheer, the MP for Regina Capel. Nice to see you here in our headquarters. Welcome.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, it's a pleasure. And our first interview is generally, as we've done with Kelly Leach and Tony Clement when he was in the right, and Maxime Bernier and Brad Trost and others, it's just to tell people who maybe don't know you a little bit of your background on your own terms. I know that you were the Speaker of the House of Commons, and I think for most Canadians, that's just sort of the person in the front in question period who says, order, stop being so rambunctious. What else did you do as Speaker besides that one a high-profile role?
No, you're absolutely right. It's more to it than just sitting at the front of the chamber and saying order a few times. I was elected in 2011 as the youngest Speaker in Canadian history, and it was a secret ballot vote by all members of Parliament. All parties participated in the election. And the Speaker, more than just presiding over the chamber and maintaining the rules, also has to have a lot of administrative capabilities. The House of Commons is about a $400 million mini department, everything from postal and printing services to security, which of course after the terrorist attack was a major issue, and I oversaw the amalgamation of the Senate and House of Commons forces into one cohesive.
So they had different police forces for the Senate and House of Commons?
From the Elgin Street War Memorial to the library, you go through several jurisdictions. There's the Ottawa Police Force in the city of Ottawa, and then the RCMP are responsible for the grounds. And then on the left side of the Parliament building is the House of Commons security, and on the right side is the Senate. So, as you can imagine, there were some issues there, and we had a substantive report to identify the shortcomings, and I oversaw the coming together of all that up until the 2015 election. So there's a lot of different roles that the Speaker plays, including a diplomatic role. The Speaker is expected to represent Parliament all around the world. We received visits from the Speaker of the Israeli Knesset to the Ukrainian Speaker. So I got to meet a lot of my counterparts around the world, talk about a lot of foreign affairs issues that were going on between Canada and our NATO allies, our American friends, and our trading partners all over the world.
I take it, being Speaker, obviously you had great translation services and legal advice, but tell our viewers about your facility with French. Would you regard yourself as fluently bilingual? It's a factor for anyone who wants to lead the whole country.
It is. We have a very substantive presence in Quebec. 12 of our MPs are from Quebec, and they're a great addition to the team. And I think any leader who wants to win in 2019 will have to be able to speak to all Canadians. And French is one of our official languages. It's very important that we were able to do that. I was born in Ottawa. I went to school in an immersion program. I can bust out my French right now if you like.
No, but I wouldn't know much.
But no, and took it all the way through high school, and as Speaker, of course, had to be very proficient in it. So I would regard my level of proficiency in French as very high, and I've gotten great feedback from the media, from my Quebec colleagues, from conservative members in Quebec.
Obviously, the fact that you've had that, I'd call it similar to a cabinet position, running the Parliament. And I agree with you on the semi-diplomatic nature of it, but in return, the Speaker has to be pretty nonpartisan because all parties had to trust you to be fair enough in ruling on disputes, points of order, points of privilege. So because of that, you generally kept a low profile, and you weren't out there in the media all the time weighing in on the spicy controversies of the day. That's over, obviously. This leadership race already has some controversial questions. I won't put them to you right away. I'll let you introduce yourself on your own terms. Tell me, if you had to make the case for yourself, not in terms of your own biography, but in terms of your policy, what would you stand for in one or two points?
Well, my slogan for my campaign is I'm a real conservative and a real leader. And I think that means that I'm an authentic, consistent conservative across the board. I believe in smaller government. I believe that there's nothing there's no wealth that the government can create in and of itself. All the wealth that it distributes was created by others, and then it reallocates it. So I always look, my default position is, should government be doing this in the first place? Back to first principles. I'm a big believer in the principle of subsidiarity, that is, each government should look after its own jurisdiction. We don't need an Ottawa knows best attitude meddling in municipal, provincial affairs, that even non-government solutions should be looked at first. The family can do things better than the city can, or The local community can do things better than a large metropolitan government, and on and on. So I will represent that side of the party that understands that the private sector has to be able to grow to create the prosperity that the left always likes to redistribute all the wealth on. But beyond that, what I think is the key for the Conservative Party is going beyond just getting to those results that we always like to focus on. We like to focus on whether or not a program is working, or whether or not the government's spending money where it said it was going to, or achieving all the things. Those are all important. But what the left is always able to do better than us is show that side, that display that side to Canadians of what motivates them. And I think Conservatives are motivated by the very same intentions as those on the left. We genuinely care for our neighbors. We genuinely care for our communities. I want the people on my street and in Regina to have more opportunity and more prosperity. But we don't often show that side. And that, I think, is what the Conservative Party needs. We don't need to become liberal light. We don't need to start selling messages that we know won't work. We don't need to be advocating for a carbon tax. We don't need to be advocating for bigger government. We can take our core, rock-solid conservative principles, our real conservative beliefs, but communicate them to a way to Canadians that will reach a broader audience, and that's what I believe I'll be able to do.
Now, you talked about fiscal conservatism and the scale of government. I don't think there would be many of your conservative counterparts in this race who would have a different point of view. Maxime Bernier certainly is an economic libertarian. I think most of them would be. You talk about selling things well. I think that's a personal thing, personal style approach, and I think people will just observe and make their own decisions on that. But let me contrast you, or ask you to contrast yourself, with two candidates who've staked out more flavorful positions. I guess my point is, saying you're a small government conservative, that's fairly normal in the Conservative Party. I would have some questions for Michael Chong about carbon tax when he comes on the show, but I think most conservatives would say, well, we're the smaller government party. Brad Trost said he's going to be the social conservative candidate, and Kelly Leitch said, I'm going to be the Canadian values candidate, especially when it comes to immigration. How would you position yourself on those issues? Because I'm trying to differentiate for myself and for our viewers amongst the dozen candidates. I think what you've described so far is good, and I'm glad to hear it. But to me, that's sort of the base, the starting point. Where are you on these other more divisive issues?
Well, I can tell you that I've always had a pro-life voting record. My concentration on a lot of these things that have been thrown out is that, look, as the leader, you have to find those issues that conservatives can unite around. There's no sense in a leader promising things that he knows that the Conservative caucus might not even go for, and never mind the Parliament itself. We need every kind of conservative to be excited to help out in 2019. We need every kind of conservative to look at either the leader or the party itself and say, I see myself in there. I see some of my values or some of my positions reflected in some way in this party. So it's important that the leader welcomes all different kinds of conservatives, but also to focus on those things that we can all agree on. There's a lot of social conservative policies that non-social conservatives can agree on. When the Conservative Party raised the age of sexual consent from 14 to 16, that brought us all together. We didn't have a big split in our caucus. It was a no-brainer. It was only those on the left that were coming up with odd arguments against that. So those are the types of things that I will look for to bring social conservatives, fiscal conservatives, libertarians, all together around those key points that we can agree on. That's the key to our success. Conservatives often like to spend a lot of time fighting over the things that we disagree on that may not even be possible to achieve in an election or afterwards. My idea is, okay, let's find a way to bring everyone in together and focus on those things that we can unite around and win elections on.
Kelly Leitch surprised me because in my mind, she was not a prominent cabinet minister in her role in the Harper government, but she staked out a very conservative point of view when it came to immigration, and all the liberal media who despised her took their own polls on the subject, the Globe and Mail, the Toronto Star. And these liberal media, which were apoplectic by her saying we should have Canadian values testing for new immigrants, their own polls showed that 80% of Canadians agreed. And in the last federal election, the niqab ban for citizenship ceremonies was universally supported in every province and by backers of all parties. I mean, except for the media party, I would say. And so I take your point about focusing on uniting the party, but I would put it to you that conservatives and all Canadians think immigration is too high. Only 8% of Canadians want more immigration. In the United States, Donald Trump has shown his most popular issue was immigration and stopping illegal immigration and reviewing Muslim immigration with an eye towards security. We've just had John McCallum announce in this week Economic Times he's going to jack up immigration. Kelly Leitch is staking out that ground. Do you have anything to say about the Syrian migrants or about John McCallum's new numbers? Or, I mean, that's something that I think conservatives, maybe it's just me, but I think a lot of conservatives want to hear something on that.
I think you're right, and I think it's more than just conservatives. I think a lot of Canadians are concerned about issues like security, and one thing we saw with the Syrian refugee issue is that it became very apparent that it was a political goal on a political time frame, and that it looked like that the Liberals were sacrificing things like security and proper vetting to reach that. And the feedback I got from my constituents and premiers around the country, a lot of people saying, look, we have to get this right. Yes, Canada can play a role in providing a compassionate space for people in danger, but we have to get the security component of that right.
But Kelly Leitch isn't talking about security, she's talking about values. What's your view on a values test?
So look, yeah, you mentioned a couple of issues, immigration and values. Let me talk about immigration first. I think it's important that we arrive at a number based on some kind of logical formula. What is the need that we're trying to address? Is it an aging population? I'm doing my part. I've got 5 young kids. I'm trying to help with that. But you know, we do have a need for immigrants to counter that aspect of our aging population. We also have some economic needs. You know, there's some shortages of skills in different regions in Canada. Let's arrive at a number based on some criteria. Let's identify what that criteria is. Does our economy need X number of trades, people with skills in trades, X number of professionals, X number of engineers? What is an appropriate level of family unification? That is important. And then let's determine that number from that. I'm not going to be in the business of trying to participate in an auction of, well, you know, one party says 300,000, another party says 400,000. I'm not going to try to outbid it. It should be based on logical rationale.
Okay, well, McCallum has said he's going to jack up the numbers probably by 100,000. Do you oppose that?
Well, what's that based on? You know,
I don't know.
Yeah, so if it's not based on something logical or coherent, then I think it's just a political target aimed at, you know, to trying to win over a segment of the electorate. I'm not going to do that. One of the strengths.
So are you against that?
Well, I am against a policy that just throws a number out for shock value to try to gain attention. I want our immigration policy to be based on what the needs of the economy are, what the needs of our society, and then let's arrive at a number, and then that'll be defensible. And I think your point is right. There are areas where, you know, people are looking and saying, well, do we need that many in this region? If it's based on common sense or logic, I think Canadians will be comfortable with that, but I don't think that they're comfortable with just a number for the sake of having a really big number. I absolutely believe that there are Canadian values that we should promote and defend. I don't agree. I reject Trudeau's notion that we're a post-national country. I think that's an insult to our ancestors, to the people who came and built this country in the tougher part of North America, that's climate-wise anyway. We carved out a wonderful society with a great, proud history. I don't know why he's ashamed of promoting that. We need to do a better job of ensuring that new Canadians, whether they're refugees or immigrants, embrace those values. We should be focusing on integration. We should be focusing on security threats and things like that. We need to be talking about practical things. One thing I can assure you is I'm not going to say something in a leadership race that I don't think is practical to implement in 2019.
I mean, I agree with you about integration and about how to get people involved in Canada's community once they're here. But Kelly Leitch has said before they get here, they should be some sort of a values screening. Do you think we should ask any values-laden questions of people before they get here?
Well, I'm not sure what she's,
okay, forget about her. Yeah, but you just tell me your answer yourself. Do you think, you're saying once people get here, integrate them, teach them. I don't think anyone disagrees. But before they even get here, should we ask them about their values? Should we ask them about Canadian values before we let them in?
I think it's important that we focus on certainly certainly looking at what type of activities people have been involved in the past with a view towards security. You know, if people.
I don't want to know about security. I mean, like, I'm not talking about violent people. Obviously, we should keep about violent. I'm talking about someone who, let's say, believes in polygamy, or believes in the subjugation of women, or believes in Islamic supremacism. That's not violence.
No. But you know, when you talk about the practical methods of dealing with immigrants, you know, here's a one-page questionnaire, and is that effective?
I don't know.
Are we going to police what's going on in people's minds? You know, is there room in a country for a difference of opinion on some issues that you might define as a Canadian value? Kelly might have something else, or a Liberal might think that you know, certain positions you should be kept out. You know, are these types of things going to be applied to, you know, Orthodox Jews or devout Christians coming from other places?
I don't know. I'm not running.
Yeah, but this is the thing. So that's why I'm not focused on those types of things. I don't think. Yes, I think Canadians want to see new immigrants come here and integrate and embrace and you know, celebrate our Canadian history, our, you know, the rule of law, our Westminster system, the equality of men and women. Those are all things, absolutely yes, and we should promote and ensure that new Canadians understand that and are willing to accept that. And then when it comes to resources and what we're doing when we have people in front of an immigration officer, we should be focusing on the security threat, because that's, I think, what really concerns Canadians when it comes to large numbers of either refugees or immigrants. I think they can understand it if they're sure that the security screening component is part of that.
All right. Well, you let me ask you a lot of tougher questions. I was just planning to have a basic.
You told me this was going to be like a nice
wanted to have a general biographical debate, but I just felt like I wanted to pin you down on a few things. I'm going to lay off now. You've been very generous with your time. We're going to follow your trajectory and those of the other candidates. You had a very strong launch. How many people were there at your campaign launch?
Well, I have 17 members of Parliament and 3 senators.
That was more than anyone else, pretty much.
By a long shot, yeah. And I've had some former MPs who are, you know, been in Parliament for many years coming on board, and I'm hoping to add to that number in the weeks ahead.
Well, listen, I take an open mind on all the candidates. I'm not a member of the Conservative Party, but I'm a supporter of the Conservative Party because I believe in certain issues. We have a range of opinions here at the Rebel. We have a bunch of people with strong opinions: Brian Lilly, Faith Goldie, Lauren Southern. And we're going to cover this race fairly. We look forward to interviewing you again. Maybe we'll be involved in some debates or some events. And I thank you for throwing your hat into the ring. You're embarking on a great mission at great personal cost to yourself and your family. And I thank you, and thanks for letting me grill you a little bit here today.
So next time I come on, it's got to be the softball.
Yeah. Right on. Nice to see you. There you have it. Andrew Scheer, the MP for Regina Capel, former Speaker of the Canadian Parliament, now a candidate for the Conservative race.